You did everything right. You worked hard. You saved your money. You followed the rules you were given with discipline and patience. And yet somewhere along the way, a quiet confusion set in. Instead of feeling closer to security, you feel as if you are drifting further away from it. You are running faster, exerting more effort, burning more energy, but the destination never seems to get any closer. It feels like standing on a treadmill that keeps accelerating while the scenery never changes. Each year you are a little more tired, a little more cynical, and a little more aware that the promises you believed in are not being kept. You listened carefully to advice that sounded wise. You delayed gratification. You made sacrifices that others mocked. You believed that if you were patient enough, honest enough, disciplined enough, the system would eventually reward you. But instead of narrowing, the gap between where you are and where you want to be keeps widening. And the most unsettling part is watching others surge ahead. People who do not seem more virtuous or more hard-working. People who often bend rules or ignore them entirely. They accelerate at a speed that feels impossible if effort alone were the deciding factor. This is not bad luck. It is not a personal failure. It is because you were taught to play a game that was engineered against you from the start. At a certain point in life, usually after 30, the people who accumulate real wealth are no longer playing the same game you are. They have quietly stepped onto a different board, one governed by power, strategy, leverage, and an unsentimental understanding of human behavior. They are playing by rules that trace back centuries, rules articulated clearly by Machiavelli, rules that have nothing to do with moral comfort and everything to do with effectiveness. The comforting ideas you were taught about money, that honesty is always rewarded, that hard work naturally leads to wealth, are not just incomplete. They are restraints. They keep you compliant, predictable, and financially captive. The wealthy do not pass these ideas down to their children. They do not teach them to wait patiently and hope. They teach them how power is structured, how systems are designed, and how advantage is created and defended. This is not about shortcuts or overnight riches. It is not about fantasy. It is about waking up. It is a philosophical shift, a stripping away of sentimentality, a decision to see money and power as they actually function, rather than how you wish they did. Before any new strategy can work, the old beliefs have to be dismantled. And this is where most people resist, because those beliefs feel safe. The financial philosophy sold to the middle class is one of the most effective systems of social control ever designed. It produces reliable workers, not independent owners. It trains people to be diligent, obedient, and patient, all qualities that serve institutions far more than individuals. Think about the standard script you were given. Go to school, get credentials, find a stable job, work for decades, save a small percentage, retire quietly. Perhaps this path worked in a different era, when economies were simpler and leverage was less concentrated. Today, following that advice is like bringing a sword to a drone war. It may feel honorable, but it is hopelessly outdated. The first illusion is the myth of hard work. You were taught that effort naturally converts into results, that grinding harder will eventually break the ceiling. But look honestly at the world around you. Are the wealthiest people the ones exerting the most physical or mental effort each day? Or are they the ones who understand systems and position themselves within them? Hard work by itself does not create wealth. It creates fatigue. Wealth is built through leverage, through risk calibrated with intelligence, through decisions that feel deeply uncomfortable to those trained to seek safety. The person working endless hours in a warehouse is undeniably working hard. The person who owns the warehouse the logistics software, and the fleet of trucks is building an empire. One is trading life for income. The other commands assets that produce value continuously, even in their absence. The second illusion is saving. You are praised for restraint, for depositing money into a savings account and watching the balance inch upward. But in reality, you are lending your money to a bank for a return that rarely keeps pace with inflation. Over time, the purchasing power of that money erodes. You are paying quietly and politely for the privilege of becoming poorer in real terms. Saving feels responsible, but it is not wealth creation. It is defense. A crouched position in a game designed to dilute currency over time. Those who understand power do not hoard cash. They deploy it. They convert it into assets that either generate cash flow or appreciate faster than money loses value. While you are saving, they are transforming. The third and most dangerous illusion is fairness. You were led to believe that loyalty, honesty, and compliance would be reciprocated by the system, that if you followed the rules would protect you. From a Machiavellian perspective, this belief is almost tragic. The financial system is not broken. It is operating exactly as designed. The complexity of tax codes, the availability of cheap debt for those who already have capital, the penalties imposed on ignorance rather than malice. These are features, not mistakes. They are hidden corridors used by the informed to multiply wealth, while the uninformed are warned to stay in line. Ordinary people are taught that debt is dangerous, that risk is irresponsible, that deviation is reckless. Meanwhile, the errors made by the masses, high-interest consumer debt, poorly structured mortgages, financial illiteracy, generate profits that lower costs and increase opportunities for the sophisticated. It is a reversal of the fairy tale. Instead of wealth trickling down, the mistakes of the many subsidize the advantages of the few. You are not just participating in the system, you are fueling it. There comes a point where this can no longer be ignored. Before 30, ignorance can be excused as inexperience. After 30, continuing to play by rules that consistently fail you becomes a choice. Hoping the game will become fair is not a strategy. Freedom begins with accepting the game as it is, and that acceptance starts with the first Machiavellian law of wealth. See clearly. Reject comforting lies. The most critical step in seizing power is clarity. Machiavelli called it the effectual truth, the reality beneath appearances. In financial terms, this means abandoning narratives that make stagnation feel virtuous. Phrases like, "money is not everything," or "rich people are greedy and unhappy," often function as psychological armor. They protect the ego from confronting a painful truth, a lack of mastery in an area that deeply affects freedom. Declaring money unimportant does not make it so. It simply reframes powerlessness as moral superiority. To see clearly, wealth must be understood not as a reflection of virtue, but as a system governed by incentives, psychology, and structure. Markets do not reward goodness. They reward value creation and strategic positioning. Economies are indifferent to intention. They respond to results. Those who accumulate wealth are not necessarily more intelligent or more industrious in the traditional sense. They are less sentimental. They observe flows of capital, legal incentives, and human desire, without filtering them through moral judgment. This law demands an uncompromising audit of your beliefs. Every assumption you hold about money should be examined. Does it push you toward action, or does it provide an excuse for inaction? Consider the belief that all debt is bad. It simplifies a powerful tool into a moral absolute and absolves you from learning how it works. In truth, debt amplifies behavior. In undisciplined hands, it accelerates ruin. In strategic hands, it accelerates acquisition. The same is true of the belief that it takes money to make money. Often what is really missing is not capital, but leverage, creativity, and the willingness to operate outside familiar patterns. Adopting this law is uncomfortable. It requires admitting that your financial situation is shaped not only by external forces, but by internal frameworks that may no longer serve you. It means accepting that some of your most cherished ideas might be the bars of your cage. But clarity is liberation. Once you see the machine clearly, you stop moralizing your position and start strategizing your movement. You can no longer win a game if you refuse to acknowledge its rules. Once clarity replaces illusion, a deeper shift becomes possible. Seeing the system as it truly is forces you to confront where power actually resides. Society shouts at you to earn more, to chase higher salaries, bigger revenue figures, louder proof of success. But this obsession with income is another trap, one that keeps people busy while they remain weak. From a Machiavellian perspective, income is noise. The real signal is the gap. Power does not live in what you make. It lives in what you keep, control, and deploy. The gap between what you earn and what you spend is not a budgeting trick meant to help you feel responsible. It is the core of your leverage. It is your war chest. It is the difference between being forced to react and having the freedom to choose. Two people can live in the same city, appear equally successful, and yet exist in entirely different realities of power because of this gap. Imagine someone earning $500,000 a year. From the outside, they look invincible. Large house, luxury cars, expensive vacations, the visible markers of success. But their lifestyle consumes almost everything they earn. The gap is razor thin. One unexpected lawsuit, one industry downturn, one health crisis, and the entire structure collapses. Despite the income, they are fragile. Their wealth is performative, not strategic. They are owned by the lifestyle they worked so hard to create. Now imagine someone earning a fraction of that income. Their life appears modest, no spectacle. But their spending is disciplined, intentional. The gap they protect each year is significant relative to their income. That surplus is not idle. It is capital waiting to be deployed. It buys assets. It creates options. It absorbs shocks. In the language of power, this person is far stronger. They are not impressive to look at, but they are resilient. They can maneuver while others panic. This is where most people fail to make the psychological transition. Extra money is treated as a reward, something to be immediately converted into comfort, status, or relief. But from a strategic standpoint, every dollar not consumed by lifestyle is a unit of power. It is a soldier. When deployed intelligently, it goes out into the world and returns with reinforcements in the form of dividends, rent, equity, or influence. When spent impulsively, it dies without ever serving you. This is why chasing higher income without mastering the gap rarely produces freedom. A raise followed by a bigger house, a bonus followed by a more expensive car, simply accelerates the treadmill. The scenery does not change. You are running faster, but you are no closer to escape. Lifestyle expansion quietly consumes opportunity. The illusion of progress replaces actual progress. From this vantage point, expenses take on a new meaning. A small daily habit is no longer small. A recurring payment is no longer neutral. Each one represents power surrendered. The gap must be defended ruthlessly, not out of deprivation, but out of strategy. Accumulation, not appearance, is the obsession of those who understand how wealth actually grows. Control the gap, and you control your future. But even a powerful gap can be neutralized if it depends on a single source. This leads directly to the next law. Machiavelli warned rulers never to rely on one army or one ally. Dependency is vulnerability disguised as convenience. In modern life, this principle translates into a hard rule: never bow to a single source of money. Most people's entire financial existence rests on one pillar: a job. It feels safe because it is familiar. A regular paycheck, benefits, a retirement plan, all wrapped in the language of stability. But this is not security. It is concentration risk. One employer, one industry, one economic shift, and the structure collapses. What looks like stability is often maximum fragility. When all income flows from one source, freedom disappears. Speech becomes cautious. Risk becomes terrifying. Creativity narrows. You are no longer a sovereign actor. You are a dependent. The wealthy understand this instinctively. They do not define themselves by job titles. They think in terms of cash flow. Their lives are structured around multiple independent streams of income that do not all fail at once. This does not mean reckless diversification or chasing every opportunity. It means strategic independence. A primary profession may still exist, but it is treated as seed capital, not identity. Alongside it are other streams, each with different dependencies and risk profiles. Real estate producing rental income, ownership in businesses through equity or dividends, intellectual property that pays repeatedly for work done once, lending capital to earn interest. Each stream weakens the power of the others to control you. The beauty of this structure is not just defense, it is offense. When one sector suffers, another may thrive. When panic forces others to sell, you have liquidity. Crises become opportunities rather than threats. While those with single income scramble to survive, those with multiple streams consolidate power. The greatest obstacle to this law is mental. Building independent income streams requires effort up front, without immediate validation. It is easier to rely on the next paycheck. But once you reframe your job as an investor, rather than a lifeline, behavior changes. Income from labor becomes fuel for construction. Each additional stream, no matter how small at first, weakens the chain. The goal is simple but profound. The moment your secondary streams can cover your living expenses, dependence ends. Work becomes a choice. Negotiation power shifts instantly. You no longer bow. You decide. Yet even multiple streams can remain inefficient if they still depend on your constant presence. This is where the next transformation occurs. The masses are taught to fight with their own hands, to trade hours for income. But time is finite. No matter how disciplined you are, you cannot scale yourself indefinitely. This is the ceiling that traps even high earners. The strategist does not accept this limit. They build leverage. Leverage is the art of achieving disproportionate results from finite effort. It is the difference between labor and leadership. While most people are busy working inside their lives, the wealthy are busy designing systems that operate independently of them. They do not ask how hard they can work. They ask how intelligently they can structure. Financial leverage is the most obvious form. Using other people's money to control assets allows capital to scale. A carefully structured loan can provide exposure to appreciation and cash flow far beyond the initial investment. Where the fearful see danger, the strategic see amplification. Debt is not worshipped, but neither is it demonized. It is a tool, dangerous only to those who do not respect it. Time leverage goes further. When income depends entirely on your hours, growth is capped. When systems replace direct effort, ceilings disappear. A consultant who sells time is limited. A consultant who packages knowledge into a scalable product breaks free. Hiring others, building processes, creating repeatable frameworks, all convert linear effort into exponential outcomes. There is also leverage through knowledge and media. Teaching once and benefiting indefinitely is one of the most underappreciated forces in modern wealth creation. A book, a course, a channel, a platform, each one becomes an asset that compounds attention and authority over time. Effort echoes. Influence attracts opportunity without pursuit. The strategist constantly asks one question: how can this be done once and pay repeatedly? Each year, one small system is added. Over time, these systems form an invisible army, working day and night. This is how fortunes quietly compound. The shift is subtle, but decisive. You stop being a component in someone else's machine and become the architect of your own. By the end of this transformation, the pattern becomes clear. Clarity destroys illusion. The gap creates power. Independence multiplies options. Leverage removes ceilings. And yet, even with all of this, outcomes still depend on one final variable that most people ignore entirely: where you choose to play. Where you choose to play determines how far your effort can travel. Even the most disciplined strategist can fail if they fight on the wrong terrain. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. A brilliant general could still lose everything by choosing an unfavorable battlefield. Certain cities prospered not because their people were superior, but because trade routes passed through them. Wealth accumulated naturally where movement, exchange, and influence converged. The same logic governs the modern economy. Talent and effort are amplified or suffocated by positioning. Most people drift into their careers. They accept the opportunities closest to them in industries they barely examined, guided more by convenience than strategy. They then attempt to compensate with effort, working harder inside a shrinking arena. A talented individual in a declining industry struggles, no matter how skilled they are. Meanwhile, an average performer in an expanding sector can rise effortlessly, carried by momentum larger than themselves. Power flows toward growth. The strategist does not ignore this flow. They study it. Positioning yourself where money already wants to go is not about chasing trends blindly. It is about understanding long-term currents. Capital leaves footprints. It clusters where problems are valuable to solve and where scale is possible. Instead of asking what feels meaningful in isolation, the strategist asks which problems command the highest rewards and which skills will be scarce tomorrow. This reframing is uncomfortable because it detaches identity from preference, but it is effective. Industries matter. Geography matters. Networks matter. Proximity to capital, information, and decision-makers accelerates outcomes. Being physically present in major hubs creates opportunities invisible elsewhere. When physical presence is impossible, digital proximity becomes essential. Access to conversations, communities, and platforms where power concentrates is not optional. It is positioning. Those who think strategically look years ahead. They study what technologies are being funded, which demographics are growing, which inefficiencies persist. They do not perfect obsolete skills. They acquire uncomfortable ones. They position themselves at the edge of change, where uncertainty repels the cautious and rewards the prepared. This is not speculation. It is pattern recognition, applied patiently. Repositioning can feel like betrayal of the past. It may require changing industries, learning difficult skills, or moving away from familiar environments. But identity is not static. You are not a fixed character. You are a strategic asset. If your current environment limits your ceiling, Loyalty to it becomes self-sabotage. The question is not who you have been, but where your leverage will be highest. The masses wait for opportunity to appear. The powerful understand that opportunity is created by placement. They move deliberately toward environments that magnify their strengths. They do not wait for permission. They relocate to where the future is being constructed, not where it has already passed. But positioning alone is not enough. Visibility creates vulnerability. As power accumulates, so does attention, and attention attracts threats. This is where the next law asserts itself with quiet authority. True wealth is not loud. It is fortified. Modern culture celebrates display. Performative success floods social media. Symbols replace substance. Cars are leased to signal status. Watches are worn as declarations. But Machiavelli would recognize this behavior immediately. He would call it dangerous. Visibility invites challenge. The law here is simple and severe. Build fortresses, not facades. Lasting power is structural. It is silent. When wealth becomes your most visible attribute, you have already exposed yourself. You have shown rivals, regulators, litigators, and opportunists exactly where to strike. The strategist does the opposite. They cultivate invisibility. They appear ordinary while constructing extraordinary foundations beneath the surface. A fortress of wealth is built on structure. Assets are not held casually or publicly. Legal entities exist to separate ownership from identity. This is not evasion. It is protection. Personal assets are vulnerable by default. Structural ownership creates distance between risk and reward. Firewalls are established before threats emerge, not after. The second layer of the fortress is boring income. While crowds chase excitement, the strategist seeks reliability. Business that solve unglamorous, persistent problems, generate steady cash flow, regardless of economic cycles. Waste removal, storage, basic services, infrastructure. These are not admired, but they endure. Predictability is power. Diversification extends beyond asset class. Geography becomes a shield. Concentrating everything within one political or economic system invites systemic risk. Spreading exposure across regions, currencies, and jurisdictions insulates against shocks. The fortress is not anchored to a single fate. Another often overlooked layer is separating identity from income. If wealth depends entirely on personal brand, reputation, or constant performance, it is fragile. The strategist builds systems that function without constant visibility. Wealth should survive your absence. If stepping away causes collapse, you have built a stage, not a structure. This approach changes psychology. Satisfaction no longer comes from applause. It comes from stability, from knowing that assets are compounding quietly, while others exhaust themselves maintaining appearances. The question becomes unavoidable. Do you want to look powerful, or do you want to be powerful? The two rarely align. When wealth is fortified, it begins to exert gravity. Opportunities move toward it. People orbit it. Stability attracts trust. Capital appears when others are desperate. This is not charisma. It is structure. It is the result of patient, uncelebrated decisions repeated consistently. And yet there is one final dimension of money that surpasses accumulation and protection. It is the most uncomfortable to acknowledge, and the most effective when understood. Money is not merely a medium of exchange. It is a pressure system. Most people believe others work for money. This is only partially true. People work harder to avoid losing what money gives them than to gain more of it. Loss aversion is a deeper motivator than desire. The strategist understands this and uses money not just to purchase goods, but to reveal and shape behavior. When resources are allocated, patterns emerge. Gifts, funding, opportunities are tests, not favors. Responses expose character. Some respond with entitlement, revealing weakness. Some respond with loyalty, revealing utility. Some respond with resentment, revealing pride and future opposition. Others use the opportunity to build independence, revealing ambition and strength. Each reaction maps the psychological terrain. This logic extends to leadership. Loyalty is not secured by salary alone. It is secured by environment. When conditions inside a system are superior to those outside, departure becomes frightening. Benefits, culture, access, status, all contribute to a structure that retains talent without force. This is control through comfort, and it is far more durable than fear. Generosity in this framework is not a virtue. It is an instrument. Resources are deployed where they extend influence. Supporting institutions, individuals, or causes is rarely accidental. It builds social, political, and cultural capital. These investments alter the landscape quietly, shaping outcomes without confrontation. This is the hardest law to accept, because it violates comforting narratives. It feels manipulative. But from a strategic lens, it is clarity. Capital shapes choices. It alters incentives. It builds loyalty, dependence, and alignment. Those who ignore this dimension remain naive participants in systems shaped by others. The masses see money as a tool to buy personal freedom. The powerful understand it as a mechanism to influence the freedom of others. This is not cruelty. It is realism. Power does not announce itself. It operates. By now, the pattern is complete. Illusion has been stripped away. Power has been traced to gaps, to independence, to leverage, to positioning, to structure, and finally, to influence. What remains is not comfort, but clarity. The final choice is no longer theoretical. It is personal. At this stage, there is nothing left to soften. The architecture of wealth stands fully exposed, and it no longer resembles the moral fable you were raised with. It is not gentle, and it is not sentimental. It is precise. Money, when understood deeply, is not just a reward for effort or a symbol of success. It is an organizing force. It arranges behavior, incentives, and outcomes long before anyone notices the pattern. Those who master it do not need to announce their power. The effects speak for themselves. This is why the final Machiavellian law feels ruthless. It reveals the ultimate function of capital beyond accumulation or security. Money is a pressure system. It compresses, reveals, and reshapes human behavior under stress. When pressure is applied, pretense collapses. True motivations emerge. The strategist watches these reactions with detachment, not judgment. Because information is power. People do not simply work for money. They work to preserve the life that money allows them to live. The fear of loss is a far stronger engine than the promise of gain. Those who understand this design environments where loss feels unbearable. Stability, access, status, and future opportunity become intertwined. Leaving no longer feels like freedom. It feels like exile. This is not enforced. It is engineered. When resources are allocated strategically, they function as tests. A promotion, a loan, a grant, or even a gift is never neutral. It creates a response. Some grow complacent and entitled, assuming continuation without effort. They reveal weakness. Some become intensely loyal, willing to protect the source at all costs. They reveal utility. Some bristle at the implicit imbalance, interpreting support as control. They reveal pride and resistance. Others take the opportunity and attempt to build independence. They reveal ambition and strength. Each outcome provides clarity. Nothing is wasted. This lens changes how leadership operates. Compensation alone does not secure alignment. Alignment is secured by structure. The strategist builds ecosystems where participation offers advantages unavailable elsewhere. Networks, reputation, learning, and future access become as valuable as money itself. People stay not because they are trapped, but because the alternative feels inferior. This is power without coercion. Generosity stripped of romance becomes strategic deployment. Capital is directed toward individuals and institutions that extend reach. Supporting a political figure, an academic institution, a cultural project, or an emerging leader is not charity. It is investment in influence. These moves alter environments quietly. They shape narratives, open doors, and shift incentives long before results are visible. This is how reality is bent without confrontation. At this point, the transformation is complete. What began as frustration has become fluency. You no longer see wealth as a scoreboard or a moral verdict. You see it as a system with inputs, outputs, and leverage points. You no longer envy those ahead of you because you understand the mechanics that put them there. Envy dissolves when comprehension arrives. This understanding forces a final comparison. The conventional path offered to most people is slow, exhausting, and emotionally comforting. It promises dignity in struggle and virtue in obedience. But it also leads predictably to mediocrity. It keeps people running, just fast enough to survive, never fast enough to escape. It is a life of constant effort with diminishing returns. Noble, perhaps, but powerless. The Machiavellian path is different. It demands clarity over comfort. It demands restraint when consumption is celebrated. It demands patience when display is rewarded. It demands the courage to see the world without filters and to act without applause. It is not for everyone. Many prefer the safety of familiar illusions to the responsibility of strategic freedom. This path requires that you focus on the gap rather than the headline number of income. It requires building multiple streams so no single failure can control you. It requires mastering leverage so systems work on your behalf rather than consuming your time. It requires positioning yourself where the future is forming, not where it is fading. It requires constructing wealth silently, with structure, instead of spectacle. And finally, it requires understanding money as a tool for shaping outcomes, not just purchasing comfort. None of this is a call to cruelty. It is a call to realism. The game of wealth is not a morality play. It does not reward intention. It rewards understanding. The wealthy are not inherently more corrupt or more virtuous than anyone else. They simply understand the rules that others were never taught. They know that freedom is not granted by compliance. It is seized through structure. After a certain age, the illusions of youth no longer protect you. The world stops forgiving naivety. You arrive at a crossroads. Whether you acknowledge it or not, you can continue to play by rules designed to extract your labor and patience while offering symbolic rewards in return. You can keep telling yourself that your struggle is meaningful, while others playing a different game accumulate influence and optionality. Or you can choose differently. You can accept the world as it is, not as you wish it were. You can abandon the need to be comforted by stories that keep you static. You can decide to stop being a pawn, moved by forces you do not understand, and begin becoming a player who moves deliberately. This choice does not require malice. It requires clarity. The game is being played, whether you consent to it or not. Capital is flowing. Power is consolidating. Systems are operating continuously. The only unanswered question is your role within them. You can remain a subject reacting to pressures applied by others, or you can become an architect, designing structures that serve your interests and protect your autonomy. There is no applause for this choice. There is no ceremony. It is quiet. It happens internally, when you discard the last comforting lie and accept responsibility for understanding how the world actually works. From that moment on, the treadmill stops. Movement gains direction. Effort gains leverage. Time regains value. You were never meant to win a rigged game by playing it virtuously. You win by understanding it deeply and positioning yourself accordingly. Power does not ask for permission. It recognizes those who understand it. The rules are already in motion. The only remaining decision is whether you will continue to be shaped by them or whether you will learn to shape them instead. Subscribe now if you want to continue learning the brutal truths the world hides from you.